All right, so we're back in the post-Thanksgiving period. What was that like for you?
Oh, it was wonderful. It's wonderful. Remember you said astrologically, my chart kind of showed I need to look out for my health.
Yeah.
I'm having real bad stomach issues.
Oh, you are? Ouch.
And I think I'm having gallstone problems,
Yeah, well,
onset of severe stomach pain. And so I really got to watch what I eat. But I messaged the doctor. He's actually not there today. He'll be there tomorrow. I just need a little CT and see what's going on. But you were right.
yeah.
Darn it. Because I was feeling so good. What the hell is he talking about?
Is it from the Thanksgiving eating too
No,
much or no? Totally separate.
no. Well, I had an avocado cucumber salad, and my friend has had the surgery, and he said the avocados are very fatty, so to speak. So,
Well, see, the thing is, this is one of those where we're being Virgo, and of course, it's not going to apply to every single Virgo. There are going to be gazillions of Virgos. But as a general principle, when Saturn is on the other side of Virgo, in your case, it applies more because it's in the health houses. You just have to be more careful during these years. It's not just
yeah.
now, this
Oh, I
year,
know.
next year, the year after. But it's a great time to also just learn a lot about your health because when
Get
you're
on
doing
it.
it that way, you're channeling through the focus power of Saturn, where things with Saturn, they grow. Like the thing is, it's the planet that you could say without it, things don't really happen, even though no one necessarily likes it a lot. People complain, and for good reason. There's no question that it's a challenging planet. But when you think of if you've made some major development, Saturn was involved, like it wasn't for you. You mentioned the 2009 that range,
That's when I had cancer.
or the 2008 9. That's when Saturn is in your sign, right? So
Yeah,
it's
that's when I had
difficult.
that was the big one, the big
Right,
one.
right.
But
But you conquered
fortunately,
that,
I made it.
right?
So, okay. And listen, my sister had a very good reading with you yesterday.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad she liked it. That's good.
I told her how you said, I didn't know that was your sister. She told me at the very end.
At the end, then I realized, oh, because I was talking with her, and she reminds me of somebody.
Yeah,
A lot of the same gestures, and then yeah,
the
it was,
one-liners and
yeah. It's exactly, yeah. I think you're in your genetic line. There's this impulse. I think you all have this sense of comedy. You're constantly
oh, we
thinking of,
we live for comedy. Yeah,
yeah,
always cutting the one-liners
yeah, exactly. I was
and
fun
always
talking
cutting
about it.
it too.
Yeah.
So, okay. Now, real quick, Santos, you see he's in trouble.
He's on the edge. The thing with him is that once he got into this mess back in the spring, and he's really late Cancer or really early Leo. It's hard to know because his look, something about his look could be more Cancerian, but his attitude is more Leo, kind of arrogant and just says things. Either way, though, that's where Pluto is putting a lot of pressure, and given what he's done, and there's just no way. I mean,
Oh, he tries to act like he's innocent until proven guilty. This isn't about taking away. This is about you doing being a congressman. It's not about taking away your liberties.
oh, of course, yeah, of course. But that's the entire GOP. I now think that the G on GOP stands for gaslighting. Honestly, I've never seen a group of people make up stuff, in open daylight. We can all see it, totally mendacious. They just say things that aren't true, and they expect people to believe it. Like, look at this latest thing with the Hunter Biden thing and this Comer guy, and
I
he's
love it though. It's fantastic.
right. But Biden is saying, yeah, I'll come in and let's make it public. Oh no, we don't want to do that. Really? I wonder why. Because they want to do it in private, behind closed doors. Then they can make up stuff about what was actually happening.
Exactly. And the other thing is, and they can't seem to get anything.
No,
But
they
the
can't. No.
but
And
the
by the
other
way,
thing, they also were hoping he'd refuse.
he'd refused, yeah, but he accepted. And here's the curious thing. You see that in his chart too, that he's had pressures for the last number of years. They're just now disappearing. They're all going away. But this Comer guy, he's got pressures going into the new year. So this is blowing up in his face because he basically makes up stuff. He goes on Fox News and he says, oh, well, he's obviously doing things. He's obviously not doing things. Otherwise, he wouldn't want to show up and
I've been
testify in
saying since
public.
the beginning, this is going to be a nothing burger.
Yeah, precisely, yeah. So that is like Benghazi. Benghazi, they tried to tarnish Hillary Clinton and it blew up in their face. They spent all that time.
put
They
her
couldn't find
through
anything.
hell. They had hearing after hearing after hearing. And
Yeah.
boy, she sure stood grounded.
I remember her laughing. Remember that cackle of hers when they said to her, what were you doing at 1 o'clock in the morning? And she sort of paused and she goes, well, I was home sleeping. And she started laughing. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
Okay, so let's look at our peoples, what they want to know. Oh, hi, Linda and Andre. If someone has psychic gifts or abilities like Linda, would this show up in their chart?
It can, but the thing about psychic abilities is that it's like it's one potential, one gift that can emerge from a certain type of chart, right? So the irony is that where Linda, where you, or many psychics get their psychic power is the same part of the chart that in another individual can turn them into a criminal. Now that's not saying, that doesn't mean you're obviously not, right? It's a different thing. But it's the idea that one aspect is on the high end and the other response is on the low end. And you see this in astrology constantly. It's why astrologers, they have to calibrate where you are when they're reading your chart, because just getting a blank chart, you could look at Trump's chart and think that he might be running spiritual retreats, which he certainly doesn't, right? He's focused on committing as many crimes as possible. He's almost like he's wired to act that way, right? So you'd see it, but you'd have to probe, to see what was going on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Can I hear you? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. Just now I got a flash that it changed speakers.
Oh, okay. Well, no, I think it's
But
good.
as long as you can hear me. Sorry,
Yeah.
you got this part out.
Yeah. No, and I was doing all the talking there for a second, so
Okay, but
it'll
that
capture it.
when it was flashing, it said change your speakers. I'm like, oh, hell to the no.
yeah.
So Andra says, can you talk about this indescribable, sometimes uncomfortable energy felt in the body? It's not an illness, it's just physical, although there are body and emotional symptoms. This is more energetic and there are waves or surges periodically that I cannot ignore.
Well, to relate that to astrology really directly is pretty hard.
Yeah.
That to me goes though to it separately. I've had this thought for the last few months that a really great title for a book would be The Myth of Mind, because people are always going on about my mind this, my mind that. Your mind reflects how your body's feeling. It's really simple. If your body feels good, your mind is amazingly clear. So then if you're experiencing any strange things, look to what you're doing with your body. Just how are you eating, sleeping, basic stuff that you do in your life. And it doesn't take much to go off the rails, because you could get a reaction to something and it can be painstaking. At least it's been for me. I've spent years trying to study this, even more than astrology. And it is difficult to really know how your body's reacting to things. And then the idea is to find a good plan and then stick to it. And if you know that a certain thing doesn't work for you, stop doing it. It's that simple. Because if you keep doing the thing that is upsetting you, then you'll get funny feelings, and including you could feel depressed and weirdly off. And it's just your own habits that are doing it, on the physical level. Yeah.
What can Andre tell us about the general climate surrounding the time of the election next year?
Oh, well, I mean, what can you tell us? I mean,
November 4th.
It's pretty.
Well, I haven't done my 2024 predictions, and I wasn't even thinking about it because I've been concentrating on something else. And then Dan said, are you going to do 2024? I said, yeah, I'll get to that later. And then when I hang up the phone, boom, I got a psychic flash and I saw a newspaper and I saw Biden wins.
There you go.
I wrote that down. Then I got a couple more hits. I said, well, I guess I'm doing the 2024 predictions.
Yeah, I would say pretty supercharged, but I look at it more as mostly the people that are involved. You know, Biden, Trump, for instance, Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is a great example of something you look at, knowing she's tied to Biden, and her chart is looking really good in the election
You were
period. You got to
saying
ask
that,
why.
yeah,
Why is that the case, right? I mean,
yeah.
you could maybe project, well, maybe Biden drops out and then she's the one that runs and wins. I don't quite get that. I think it's
That's not necessarily sunshine lollipops either. That's a lot of stress.
what you mean in 24.
You said her chart's much better.
Her
She's
chart
probably
is
happy he won, right?
Oh no, yeah, no. For Kamala is part of the team with Biden. You know, they're like one unit, and
People were asking me, so who's he going to pick for VP? I'm like, what? He has a VP.
no,
Well, is he happy? I said, yeah, he's happy with her.
well, that's an example. You know, you could almost call it transference astrology, right? If I'm Biden and I see Kamala's chart, I say you're running with me, because
Right.
because I'm
Right.
thinking, you know, we're both in this, and if your chart is looking really good, it helps. You know, it helps me believe in my own. His is good, but not as good as hers. Let's just say that at that time, right? Hers is
Really?
really good. She
Interesting.
has the signature that when Obama and Bill Clinton were elected president, the
Whoa,
Jupiter through the ascendant. That's really good, right? So
that's
yeah,
perfect.
it helps a lot.
Okay. Can you live another life simultaneously? That's not really astrology related. I'm an Aquarius, February 1st, 1966. Is there something astrological that's making me feel off balance and queasy? I've been hearing this a lot with vertigo. I've been hearing this a lot. Is there something with Aquarius
Well,
that's going on right now?
I mean, from February 1st, the major pressures on that chart were back in 2021. And as far as now, it would probably be a different planet. But even there, my answer is always your first step is to look to the basic physical reality of your life before you start suspecting, you know, subtle planes, extraterrestrials, whatever.
Yeah.
Deal with the physical first. You know, search for that before you think something more subtle or something more unusual, invisible is happening.
Right.
That's how I would do it.
Catherine, I've just come off a months-long transit of Pluto to Venus at 26 degrees Capricorn in the 12th, only 4 degrees from my ascendant, at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and felt an oppressive emotionally, mentally, and physically that finally lifted when Pluto went direct in September 2023. Please talk about the effects of Pluto transit, natal, Venus, and ascendant.
Well, part of it is what you just said, which is that one of the possibilities is to feel a great deal of oppression. You know, depending on what's going on in your life, because again, a lot of it depends on your trajectory. But we just said earlier, that's the same transit, sort of, not exactly because it's to the sun, it's bigger, but still the Santos thing, right? If you're in those kinds of jams, that is not a helpful transit. The main thing is that Pluto tries to change something in you. It tries to transform you in some way. Pluto-Venus very often relates to relationships because Venus is a relationship planet, but not always. You have to, again, calibrate, find out what's going on in the person's life. If it's to the 12th sign, because you're saying Aquarius rising, so that means Venus is in the previous sign, that's a kind of a spiritual change of some kind that you go through.
Oh.
And it's good that now you're feeling better. And also, you know that Pluto's moving away from there permanently now. It's been doing that all of this year and a little bit last year too. It's a pretty long transit because Pluto moves really slow. Now it's, you know, in 2024 goes into Aquarius. It's going to be a thing of the past. Now you can try to understand, well, what just happened, how have I grown, etc., like that. Yeah.
Wow. Please explain the significance of yods, fingers of God, and nodes and their impact on events.
Yeah, yods, you know, people focus on the yod so much. To be honest, it wouldn't be my favorite to have one of those because yods, unless you're very spiritual, if you're a very spiritual person, then it's great for manifesting that, for becoming more and more illuminated and channeling great energy. The problem
Right.
is that it's formed by these aspects. They're called quincunxes 150, and the 150 is pretty hard. You can get health problems. It's not an easy aspect at all. This is the one that Trump next year has got major 150s in his chart. They're a major threat. They're nothing to fool around with. I see them a lot in health disasters, even death and dying, right? So, people, they romanticize the yacht. I don't really know why. It's kind of, it looks good. It makes like a interesting pattern in the sky. And I've seen it in the charts of spiritual masters, but I've also seen it in the charts of the most awful people in
Yeah.
the universe. So both
Yeah.
of those are true for that.
Thank you, Linda and Andre. This is Loving Lane Cottage. What are the ramifications of having sun and moon in the sign of Virgo? How does this help or hinder anyone with this configuration? I read a statistic that more people are born under the sign of Virgo than any other, so the likelihood of this happening is probably frequent. Is that true?
When they say that, if you read a statistic about something being more so than something else, maybe by some amount, a couple of percentage points, but it's still going to be true that throughout the entire world, about every 12th person is a different sign. That's it. And then Sun and Moon in Virgo, that's when the Sun and Moon are in the same sign. I mean, you can say things like it makes you extra Virgo. You're going to be more Virgo than if you only have the Sun in Virgo. So then the classic things that are Virgo and like connections to health, because Virgo, I mean, isn't it true that you spent a period of time, you were a nurse, right?
Yes.
Right. So you are Virgo in one of the health houses. Nursing is one of the pretty obvious ways you would express that. So,
Right.
but then you can see Virgos where they'll say, "Oh no, never in a hospital. I do health insurance, or I do this other, or I'm a veterinarian, or some kind of thing where you're doing health and repair." And then Virgo is very analytical. They're people that have a really active mind. You put the sun and the moon there, that's going to get increased even more. You got to develop self-awareness so you don't drive yourself crazy. Because one of the things that Virgo is famous for is self-critical, because they think so much, they start criticizing themselves, which is not a good idea generally. It's always
Right,
better to,
right.
There, by the way, for you, it helps you a lot that you have a lot of planets in Leo. So your Leo planets, they're I'm happy to be who I am.
That's my big ass head too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, by the way, though, depending where that sun and moon are, because that's where you got to talk degrees. Where are they placed? Then you can talk about when Saturn is going to run into that, right? And there's a big difference if you tell me I'm right at the very beginning between, like, what is it, September? No,
Can you
August
put me
20
on pause real quick? Sorry.
Right. So I was saying that if someone says Sun, Moon, in Virgo, depending on the degree, if you're between August 21st, when Virgo starts, into the end of that month, then you're those two Saturn runs into them in 2023. But if you say, no, I'm born in September later, then Saturn will catch you later. And knowing that is really important, because the idea with astrology is to know where you are. What planets are you in? And then in part, you can say, well, if I don't feel so well, I know it's going to pass. That makes it easier for one, or even knowing what to do. But you need to know the degrees, because otherwise every Virgo would experience the same thing, and they don't. It depends on
And they
where.
don't. Yeah, I've watched that.
Yeah, exactly.
And who was it I listened to? An astrologer, and she used to say, like when I went through the Saturn with the Cancer, she said exactly the time frame that things would come up.
Yeah.
And
No, and
so I knew people in the beginning, then it happened to me, and then people towards the end.
yeah, that part is pretty inescapable. I'm always trying to study it, but what I'll notice is that when I get the Saturn visit, it tests me. It puts me in a energy level that is not as easy. I notice that I'm kind of stuck like in a bit of quicksand for a while. But then if I pay close attention, I'll discover something interesting that I can carry with me, that empowers me. But
They always say Saturn always leaves a gift at the door on its way out.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. pretty much.
That's
And
what happened to
especially,
me. My gift was my psychic abilities.
yeah, exactly. Which for you, it's really symbolic because it's in that, how we said earlier, what can make someone psychic. That's what that location in the 12th house, it can definitely do that if you, I don't know, that becomes mysterious about that because not every
Right.
person will go through going from being sick to being psychic. But in you, it was probably waiting to emerge, right? And it
It
was
was
just enough
boom.
to,
I'm telling you.
yeah.
Plus, I hear people talking to me,
Mhm.
and I'm not a paranoid schizophrenic. So,
Well, glad to know that.
uh, well, this is another. I don't think we can answer this. Love the show. When we get an alien disclosure and enter a universe-based economy, will gold and silver maintain? That's got nothing to do with astrology. I'll save that question for my other questions. I'm going through a period of depression. I was wondering if this is a Virgo problem. Oh my God, we're getting nothing but Virgos writing.
Well, it could be. It's possible. For instance, if you're at the very beginning, this is
See
good because it's
September 4th.
okay. Well, that's a bit. Four would be that's more toward the middle. See, there. What I would say to that is next year there's a lot of Saturn, especially near the end of the year and like around November. There's a lot of Saturn, and also around the spring period, 2 points. But the whole year takes on that quality because Saturn is roaming around the degrees. So if you have a tendency toward becoming depressed, it's a great year to really study it and try to get to the other side of it because it's the opportunity, to transcend and grow through it. But you got to work on it. See, the thing about Saturn is that Saturn is the planet that says, you don't work on it, I give you nothing. It's that simple.
Right. And also, if you keep going over, you keep deciding that's your focus. You like, there's such a truth in to pick your battles. Like some people I read and they're having trouble at work and they're thinking about suing them. I'm always very careful with that. And I say, pick your battles. Know what is totally justified and what isn't. Because
Yeah,
sometimes it just creates more heartache for you.
yeah, yeah, it's totally true. Yeah.
So I have been wondering, it's so interesting, John Running mentioned this about the war in Ukraine. Have you taken a look-see?
I haven't been part of that in a while, but what I have always in the back of my mind is this thing where you can almost see what Putin's play is. Putin is banking on Trump or a Republican administration winning, which is not going to happen. And he actually is a great data point saying the opposite because in 2025, Saturn enters Aries, 2025, 2026. That's not good for Putin. He's got all those planets in Libra. The other thing is, I don't know if you saw that story, it's really interesting. This goes to what we've talked about in the past, that women are rising in the world.
Yes,
And
thank you.
it's very unhelpful to people like Putin who they want to create masculine regimes. They have this idea that the patriarchy should rule the world. But I don't know if you saw that story. Women in Russia are starting to do what they did in past wars. They're getting angry that their men, either sons or husbands, they're spending time in battle and they're not even being returned. Like they go there and they tell them, oh yeah, we'll end your deployment a year later, and they're not doing it. So I read this article that they're starting to do demonstrations and the Kremlin is getting scared because in prior wars, like in Georgia, or when you go back to the 80s, that's what destroyed them in Afghanistan. The mothers finally got really angry, and so then the country had to stop the war. So women are his enemy. They're rising, not just in Russia, but because there are stories about China as well. But for Putin, in my opinion, not good. So when I look at that, and then Zelensky on the other side, Zelensky, we can't say 100% if he is the time he is, but it looks like it's a pretty good time. It was published. He's Gemini rising. So Gemini rising is the same as Kamala Harris's rising. So that means next year is really good. So you tell me, interpret it however you want. Gemini,
I love that. Thank you.
Between the summer of 24 and the summer of 25, Jupiter is going through Gemini. So there's traction there prior to the election and after the election for Zelensky, where the thug Vlad the Impaler there, he's got a problem. He's got a problem. So to me, the Ukraine war, it's a matter of being patient, even though right
It's
now.
interesting. I hadn't heard about the mothers. really being upset. Where's my boys? Yeah.
Yeah, because it's inevitable. No matter what, when you have a country with millions of people, and think about the modern era. The Russians keep thinking, I mean, I don't know, but they seem to believe that we're in 1940 where you can hide things, from people. People have internet connections now. It's a big problem for these fascists because the word gets around, and people
Yeah.
discover what's going on. And so it's not good. Not good at all.
And apparently China's really going through some illnesses.
Yeah, China's hurting. Well, the article I read, the problem they're having is that the women don't want to have children. It's just a big problem.
But the
Big,
children
big
are
problem.
getting sick, really sick right now.
Okay, that's a separate one. What?
They stopped with making children be inoculated and stuff. And now they're twice as many. A lot of them have pneumonia and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I'm really curious about China because the chart for China looks pretty legit because it's based on Mao back in 49 announcing the new thing and all that. And they've got a lot of Pluto going through in these next 2, 3 years. And one response to that is to get really militant, which they might. But the other response is
I never felt him, the president that came and met our president. I felt like he really wants to work something out because I think China's in trouble, like you said.
Yeah, well, then the Pluto was going to say is that other side of Pluto crossing the ascendant is you change yourself. You realize that you have to change the pattern that you're in order to move forward properly because the old style isn't working. And
Okay.
that to me is the more likely thing too, because what are you going to do with military power? I mean, there are a number of powers that are really strong, and what's the point of starting a war? That makes
Right.
no sense. Yeah.
Have you taken a look-see at Netanyahu?
Netanyahu was in trouble, obviously. Look at the jam he's created. He's very late in Libra, and so then the Pluto. That's another example. Pluto squaring, right? Because anybody that's late Libra, late Capricorn, Cancer, or Aries is getting Pluto pressure. He's in the middle of a big jam, and my sense is that between now, there's still quite a bit of runway though, because it takes it all the way into the end of next year. But I think he's going to probably lose his position. He's going to probably get bumped.
I'm telling you, he's getting bumped or taken out. They want him to go.
Yeah, well, it's not a good based on the jam he's created, or because really in a way he's the one responsible in a lot of ways because he was doing all those fascist things, and I remember thinking the military is not going to be happy with this, so now they dropped the ball. I mean, Israel has never made a mistake like this. This is the first time in their history that they were totally caught off guard, and the way he was treating, the institutions and the military was not helpful. And from what I understand, he's being blamed. So he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. My feeling is between now and the end of next year, this guy's toast.
Okay.
That's what I would call it. Yeah.
Which is more impactful? Thank you, Paula, by the way. Uranus conjuncting the 10th house cusp or the actual midheaven? With Gemini as the 10th house whole sign and the midheaven at 25 degrees Gemini, this is an upcoming for me in the not too distant future. Thank you.
Okay, well, the person they give a lot of information, but still not enough. Like you have to know when a person says the 10th house cusp, if you use whole sign, then when Uranus reaches the degrees of the ascendant in that house,
Yeah.
that's when you get a lot of Uranus action. But let's just say this, Uranus going through the 10th, it's going to do that for 7 years because Uranus takes 84 years to go around. So in a sign, it hangs out for 7 years. That's 7 years of going through a person's career place. But again, it depends a lot. What are you doing with your life? Because if you say something like, oh, I wish I could do something entrepreneurial, which is what Uranus is great at, then the next questions are, what are you doing now? Are you trying things? Are you focused on that? That's where you need the Saturn to help you make it happen. One good thing is you've got 7 years to do it, right? But again,
Right.
you have to calibrate and ask the question to see what the person is doing with that Uranus. And then it's a question of focus to bring it about. The good thing is that there's a long track with Uranus because it's slow, right? It moves.
Right.
Yeah.
For those born in the house of Pisces, How will Neptune, Jupiter, or Uranus relate to Saturn's impact Pisceans while Saturn is in Pisces until February 2026? Did you get
Yeah.
that?
I did. Yeah, I know what they're talking about. See, these questions, they're questions that uh, you can think there's a straightforward answer. It depends so much on where, because the house of Pisces, which one? There are 12. Where does it land in that person's? That's the first question. Second question is, what degree are we talking about? Because if someone is, remember I said earlier, early Pisces, then you get Saturn now. Later, the person you brought up a bit after that, they're next year. There will be people that are late in Pisces. They'll experience it in 25, parts of 26. You got to calibrate it. You got to figure out where precisely is it happening. Otherwise,
Right.
if you could just say, here's what it is, the house of Pisces, every Pisces would tell you, oh yeah, that's what I've been experiencing. And you'd get millions of Pisces, writing the newspapers and saying, yeah, that was perfect. What you said about us is exactly what happened, which is just not true. A lot of the time, in fact, if not all the time, most of the time is completely different because you got to calibrate it.
Um, did you take a look see at Nikki Haley?
I haven't in a while. Nikki Haley, though, the thing with her is, what I recall is, I think she's a Capricorn, so she is benefit. She actually is gaining benefit from the Pluto because it's conjoining instead of squaring or opposing. It's the best sign for Pluto, provided you're not a total criminal, which I don't think she is. I think with her,
I
she's
don't
just
think she is either.
no, she's just one of the many GOP politicians. I think with her, she is benefiting from probably being the smartest of that lot. And I don't totally know what her game is. Do you get a feeling for what she's trying to do? Do you think she's
Well, I
trying?
do get that she changes what she's saying to think that she's bringing in the people she wants. She's totally for banning abortions.
Yeah,
That
which is
won't work for her. I'm telling you, right? Just like with Big Mouth Trump saying he's going to stop Obamacare. He always says that.
yeah. Well, I think with Haley, the thing you can anticipate is that Haley, until next June, which is probably around, isn't that when June is when things get decided, right? Around
Yeah.
who's going to be, that's where the support from Jupiter is. She's getting the Jupiter and Taurus helping her. After that, it switches. It's the same thing with DeSantis. DeSantis, when you get into the middle of the year, the little help that he's getting, because he's not getting very far. By the way, people should know that on Thursday, he's debating Gavin Newsom on Fox. That is going to be a
Ooh.
lot of fun because
Oh,
I think DeSantis is
this
totally
Thursday?
this Thursday at 9 p.m. And the thing is, DeSantis is one of the worst debaters I've ever seen, and he's getting in the ring with someone who's a very good talker. And I think he's doing it because he's desperate to revive his,
He's hoping to
image.
get a sling dinger in there.
Well, yeah, no, Newsom, you got to be careful. That guy is really well informed.
He's very good on his feet. And let's
Exactly.
hope they don't compare manliness.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Well, DeSantis has nicer boots.
That spooks. Uh, oh,
funny.
thank you for telling me that. Fox News, though.
Yeah.
My TV, I think, is condemned to anything with Fox News, but I'll take a look. See.
Well, I
Oh,
mean,
I saw that Rupert Murdoch. He had to testify for some other place that's suing, and they were talking about the pillow guy.
well, that's
And he
another
says,
one.
hey, when you get a clown that wants who pays you to come on and do his clown show, you let him at it. And he's not red or blue, he's green.
Yeah, no, we totally know what Rupert Murdoch is onto. There's no question. So yeah, and it's true. I mean, the pillow guy, but I think the pillow guy, I think he's a little bit demented. I think
I think something's wrong with him.
he's lost his head because it just makes no sense because one thing is when you're a liar and you push something, but then when you start losing all your money too, you start wondering, why is this person
And he
persisting?
kept throwing it out, and he wanted His Royal Highness King Trump to acknowledge him. He was just so, and Trump was laughing at him, and they let him spend all his money.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
No,
a
and
shame.
he's an example, by the way, of you could say the corruption of a principle, where he's got this Neptune connection that fits really well for selling pillows because it's the idea of sleep. It's that sleep energy, but it's also a planet that can lead to a lot of self-deception and and delusional thinking.
That's how he is.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting question from Anne. Are there any similarities in the charts of Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler?
There are definitely. Yeah.
Did you ever talk about that?
I did. I first touched on it a bit in 2020. So there's a video on my channel. If you type Hitler, that'll come up. And I think I did another one a bit later. And there's more that can be done because there are some really fascinating harmonics, especially that show these two people. Hitler was even more intense at this than Trump, but both of them show this, where they try to impose their way on life. They have a way of creating a movement, a direction where they impose their thinking, and it's a harmonic that can easily go destructive. That's why Trump is so focused on violence and basically attacking people. And Hitler was crazy that way. I mean, he was totally focused on death and.
Well, let me tell you, if Trump could have got away with assassinations, he would have.
Oh no, yeah, no, there's no question. Very similar that way. No, and also but going back to our friend, sort of Pluto, because both of them strong connection to the Pluto energy. One of the corruptions of Pluto is the impulse to be domineering and fascistic, and wanting to control everything. And both of them have that in their charts and in their way of being. So right. Yeah, there are a lot of similarities. I remember doing more than one class I've done where I brought up the harmonics, and it's really fascinating because Hitler in his chart, he's got this huge pentagram formed by all the planets from the fifth harmonic. I mean, it's the scariest thing you'll ever see, and you realize this guy played it out to the limit. But look where it ended up, right?
Yeah. He also had a professional genealogist make sure there was not a hint of Jewish blood in his body, but there was.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Genealogy go back and erase everything.
Yeah, no, I mean the end result. These guys that have these ideas, where they create movements, and they have trouble somehow. It's like they can't do math. Trump is great at this too. They have less support than they need, so they go with the 40%. Well, think about it. That means the other 60 is going to fight you. And back in the 1940s, whatever, that was the entire world. I mean, he just took on everybody. He would start wars in every direction. There's not a lot of brain power there. I mean, there's a sort of a...
He was really shaken. Was it Parkinson's? What was it that he had?
Hitler?
Hitler.
Oh, Hitler by the end. Hitler was part of that thing where, I don't know if people know this, but if you study your history, the entire Third Reich became addicted to meth. And so Hitler was addicted to meth too. They destroyed their nervous system. Like, it's almost comedic to read about the Third Reich. For a while, they were very productive. Of course, you're living on speed. So you get a lot done. And then the whole country just totally fell apart. And Hitler was among them. His whole body was just in his 50s, was turning to mush, right? And then he had to kill himself because they were about to catch him, and he had no options. So.
And by the way, that is him that was burnt in that grave, because they had the jawbone. Russia took the jawbone, and they actually got a DNA out of one of the molars, and it was at Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, and
they were saying he went to Argentina and all this stuff. No,
yeah, I know. The conspiracy theories always abound, but yeah, I agree with you 100%. That's the historical account, and you can really see it in the chart. I mean, that's the thing about people like that. Even though they're horrible people, you get a lot of astrology information from their charts because you know what they did and you know when they were doing it. And he's the classic person that in the 1930s, everything is flowing, and just when he starts to attack, it was actually Jupiter again. Remember I said to you before we started recording, I said to you, Jupiter, it can be a really dangerous planet if you misuse it, especially when it's in square or opposed. A person can get big expansionary ideas and launch them. He started that, basically the whole war doing that, and he walked himself into a total disaster in the 1940s. Right. But in the 1930s, This is what Trump wants. You see these rallies with all these people clapping and yelling. Trump always says, if there's a lot of people, and then that's good, right? He thinks that that's great. That's why Trump has a lot of respect for Kamala Harris, because whenever Kamala has any kind of rally, she gets a lot of people. So I've heard him make
Well,
comments.
and then he made his press person say that place was full, and it was not of people.
Oh,
who
yeah.
became president. It was all about the numbers.
Yeah, no, it's always like that. I mean, he's like, Trump is like a cartoon character. He's so blatantly mendacious and, self-interested and childish in the way he sees the world. But, here we are,
And
right?
he doesn't really care about anybody else.
No.
Just like Hitler, when they said, when they were, was it Russia was getting ready to bomb Berlin, or they were bombing Berlin? Should we get the people out? They asked.
No.
And he said, no, they didn't fight for me. Let them all die.
No, and there is footage of Hitler shaking the hands of young men, less than 15, 16, 17-year-old. He was sending them to their death, and this was when he was about to shoot himself in the head, and he knew he had no place to go, and he's still doing this. I mean, it's like a total disconnect from your humanity. That's really what it is. When you act like Hitler and Trump, you're not really connected to people. You're kind of an island unto yourself. So there's no feeling. It's almost like you're a psycho, really. It's what you are.
Right.
I hate to say it, but yeah.
Well, we reached all the questions.
All right. Well, that was
almost an hour, if you can believe it.
That was, as usual, a lot of fun. And
A lot of fun to be with you.
Let's connect again soon. All right.
Next time, dinner's on me.
All right. I look forward to it. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.